Conrad Schmitt Studios and the Gruenke family are internationally known for their interior decorating and restoration work here in Milwaukee and all over the world. Bernard Gruenke Sr. and Bernard Gruenke Jr. are my special guests next on I Remember Milwaukee. Hi, I'm Jim Peck. Welcome to I Remember Milwaukee. And joining me tonight is Bernard Gruenke Sr., the chairman and art director of Conrad Schmitt Studios. Also joining us is his son, Bernard Gruenke Jr., the president of the company. Conrad Schmitt Studios has been involved with restoration work of numerous landmarks since the late 1800s. Take a look.
Imagine a theater, a church, even a train station. Anything is possible with ideas. Bernard Gruenke Sr. and Bernard Gruenke Jr. have many ideas. From the U.S. Courthouse and Federal Building to Old St. Mary's Church, they've helped restore our origins. Their company, Conrad Schmitt Studios, has restored, redecorated, and created designs in many of the most prestigious buildings in this country and the world. Among their projects, St. Josaphat's Basilica in Milwaukee. The artists are recreating the stained glass windows. They have done many churches, incorporating fine details of gilt and stained glass with the history of a building. Bernard Sr. joined the firm because he says he heard Milwaukee was the Athens of the Midwest. He and his son and their company, Conrad Schmitt Studios, continue to enhance our world.
When you accept an assignment to renovate something like St. Josaphat's, I'll get that word out yet, here in Milwaukee, this is a major commitment for the Conrad Schmitt Studios. What makes you say, yes, we will do this, or no, we won't do it?
We must first love it. Love the architectural form, the heritage, and the symbol, the reason for which the structure and the artwork is there.
What are the things that resonate with you when you look at it then?
I feel it's a little part of what our forefathers brought to this wonderful city and a wonderful country. To know that the art has given a little expression and will tell their story and tell our story from here on in.
Now, as the businessman of this, do you ever look at this and say, Dad, let's take this. This is going to be a great job.
Yes, I do. The reason our roles are, you could almost say symbiotic. We play off each other, and our agenda is completely different. But we work well together as a team. We have a team concept at the studio, and we see this project as a focal point not only in Milwaukee, the Midwest, but across the country as well.
This is St. Josaphat's specifically.
Right, and it is a chance to take this beautiful piece of architecture and return it to what it once was back in 1926, 1927.
Do you ever have doubts about something? Now, this is a project that was brought to you. It's going to take a long time, and as you're doing it, they're out raising the money, and there's no guarantee that that money's going to be there.
No, we never have doubts about that, I don't think.
I do.
We just, I think it's not, the financial end doesn't affect us as much as the learning process as we're going through the process, and we do the investigative archaeological digs, so to speak, in the paint.
Before you go to that, let me just follow up with one point that you said the business part really doesn't concern you that much, but at the same time, it would be terribly frustrating if forget all the financial aspect, it'd just be terribly frustrating to get halfway through something and find out you couldn't continue. Has that ever happened? And what would you do?
No, I don't believe it's happened. I feel that when we have the creative work started, it's the seed for the growth of the art in the community, in that structure, in the community.
Bernie, now let me let you finish that sentence, because you're going into the archaeological aspect of it.
Right. That's we learn as we go along. What was there in 1926, we analyze the paint, all the layers back to the original layers, beneath a stereo microscope and under a balanced light, and then we record the stencil patterns and we replace all of the original. And it's fascinating, but you don't just know the book by opening the book. You learn as you're working.
What are you learning, or what have you learned as you've worked with St. Josaphat's?
Well, one of the things that we learned is we thought the windows were from 1915, 1920, and as we're in the West Transept, there's a man's name scratched in the window. He was an apprentice painter, apparently, from Innsbruck, and he put his name in there, and it was fired in the kill in 1902. So you learn many things. You learn there are names all over the interior of St. Josaphat's. Really? Oh, sure. It's very, very interesting. I mean, just the piece of architecture, the church itself, is a piece of history. And there's so many wonderful people connected with it, too. The entire foundation, Father Bill Callahan, wonderful, wonderful people.
Now, are you leaving your names in there a little bit, somewhere along the line?
It frightens me that you ask, Jim, because Bernie is liable to have a large sign on it stating Conrad Schmitt Studios.
Not in a church.
Present St. Josaphat's Basilica.
Yes, yes.
No.
Are you saying that he is not the artist that you would hope for in your son?
No, I think he's the artist. He senses the business spirit of it at times, you know, and I have a feeling that the art, I'm not always sold on doing exactly what our forefathers did at that particular time. There were times that our forefathers had the amalgamation of Romanesque, of Gothic, and of this and this, and so we had an assemblage of all of this on some of our structures, and I think it's necessary at times to state this was good at that particular time, but now it would be good to separate it or to reduce it and come through with a plain symbol. You know?
Do you have an example of that? Something that, a place that you have worked on and had that problem?
On many, many structures. For instance, on St. Robert's Church, the committee's wish was not to decorate the sanctuary. They wanted to have an apse that was quiet and without expression. And our competitor, the Rambush firm, decorated this sanctuary with murals many years ago, and I felt it was our obligation in this Lombard Romanesque church to restore these murals, and we did, but with an art trempeloy, with a gold mosaic and so forth, you know.
Now, how do you handle those problems? Those strike me as being very, very touchy problems when you're dealing with a church and you're dealing with people who worship in that church, for example, and love that church, and now you want to say, no, let's do it this way, as opposed to that way. How do you?
It's touchy at times, Jim.
It's a very sensitive issue, because what we do, a perfect example is we did a project in Milwaukee, a church, and my dad and I made the presentation, and my dad made most of it in the evening, and we left the church, and as we walked out of the church, a lot of people said, great job, super. And one man walked up to my dad and said, when it comes to liturgy, you're a fossil, you don't know what you're doing. And I said, come on, let's go, just ignore it. And we didn't take 2 steps. And an older lady came up with an umbrella and hit him over the head and said, your
right, father?
Right. And she said, you hippie? And I thought, you got to be kidding. You know? But you can't please everybody. We try to do our very best.
People take this very, very strongly. How do you react to being a hippie?
Well, it shocks me because I felt that I'm a student of the art and would prefer that they see an open view of things. For instance, Jim, many years ago, I did a church in Madison, and when the church was being blessed by a very fine bishop, a wonderful man, And he stepped out of line and he said, I wouldn't give you 10 cents or $10 for that set of stations. So it shocked me, you know. I said, Bishop, you'll become accustomed to it in a little bit. He called me later on, and a few months later, and he gave me dozens of projects in Madison and Holy Name Seminary and many things. I think it is the same with music. Take a little time to study and appreciate it. It's the same with art. And it disturbs me that many times in churches that we think only of traditionalism in the acceptance of art. And not that I'm all Picasso or Chagall or one of the modernists, but I sometimes think it's what makes that city. Years ago, I met a man in Chicago with the I Corporation, and I asked him why Chicago was more contemporary than the spirit of Milwaukee. And it disturbed me because I want Milwaukee to live and grow. And he said, Bernie, I attribute all of this to the acceptance of Chagall and Picasso and so forth.
In Chicago?
In Chicago. And he said that's a good thing, you know.
Let's go back a little bit of history. I mentioned the Conrad Schmitt Studios have been in existence since the late 1800s, and I should mention that Bernard Gruenke was not the founder of that, that firm. But this day represents your 60th anniversary, I understand.
That's exactly right.
How did this happen? How did you get involved in this?
I completed art school in first Layton and Corcoran in Washington, D.C., and then studied under an Italian portrait painter in Philadelphia, and finally came to Milwaukee and realized that it was not my wish to do only portrait painting. And I spent a little time looking at the works at the Conrad Schmitt Studios, and Rupert Schmitt asked me to come back in about 6 months. He said, we have nothing now. And he said, we can secure these Italian and German professors a dime a dozen. Why should we take the young American boys who know nothing, you know? And the next morning at 6 o'clock in the morning, I was on their doorstep. I said, I made up my mind, this is where my work is. I'm going to live here and work here. And so we started for that $7 a week.
$7? Doing what? Do you remember what your first jobs were?
Washing cars and moving wine barrels. And then, of course, beginning to sketch and do work on stained glass.
I wonder how many people starting out today would have the courage and the belief to do that. Did you always know that you were going to go into this, or was there a time when you thought, I don't want any part of it?
Or yes, every day. but no, I started just like our children started from little on, and started at the same wage, about $8 a week.
Didn't help to be the boss as a
No, and it started doing the same thing, washing cars, cleaning the latrines, everything else you can think of, and gradually you work your way forward. You have the art background. I did take business at Marquette University, and studied art beneath my father and many other artists. And all of a sudden, you find that instead of asking questions, you'll always ask questions, but people start asking you questions, and you have the right answer.
Where do you find materials to restore something that is so old that they use different systems now?
Restoration and conservation is not an art form. The art we're applying is an art form. But the way we apply it is a science, and that is an ever-growing, day-by-day learning process. And that's one thing that we keep abreast of. Both Heidi and Gunnar, our son and daughter, are up to date on the latest methods. At the same time, Senior will teach all of us the quickest way to do something with the latest methods. So, I mean, we work real well as a team.
Some of the materials, I'm sure, in the paint and in the glass are simply either non-existent or are against some environmental rules.
That's right.
So you've got to be able to substitute. That must be very complex and very difficult.
And it's difficult. Today, we do not have the Buon fresco painters. We have the oil painters or acrylic and so forth. But when I think years ago that Michelangelo with his Buon fresco, and he was opposed to painting. He was a great sculptor, and he wanted to say, leave me do my sculpting, but the leaders of the Vatican at that time said, you accept the Sistine Chapel and you do that.
Yes, it was interesting. They had a way of, shall we say, building a fire under you.
That's right.
But it is incredible to me when you see the Sistine Chapel and you realize he really didn't want to do that.
He didn't want to do it. He hated it.
And it's a
then the story,
fabulous piece of art.
Then the story, Jim, that the cardinals and the Holy Father said to him, but your theology on this ceiling is better than anything that I've ever known. So, but he said, you were the theologian, and later on I became the artist because you didn't have the courage to finish the work, and I convinced you and I forced you to finish the work. So he said, you're the theologian and I'm the artist, you know.
Have you?
And this happens with ours at times too, you know, that we're asked to prepare a study, sometimes contrary to our wishes, and but we must be obedient to the overall plan.
But you do get your own way. There is a story, and you'll have to fill me in because I only know it sketchily, but I remember someone mentioning it to me, that there was a church and you painted it a gray. And this was I think it was a Jesuit church, if I remember correctly. And there was a problem with that. Okay, that
St. Ignatius.
St. Ignatius, oh yes, we did a church, and first of all, they didn't want the Milwaukee artists to do the work, Jim. And we won it because of the study of the works of Brunelleschi and the knowing exactly the heritage of their structure. And finally, when they saw it, and they gave us the assignment, and we prepared our sample on the ceiling, and a good size sample, and they accepted everything, but they said they were opposed to that, the gray on the coffers. And I needed that gray on the coffers. No matter what, I felt that I was sold on the art, and I would not give in.
Why? What was it about it?
I felt that a coffer should be accentuated to show that it is a coffer, that it is a deep recess. And we used a gray, and of course they said, no, Bernie, everything is good. The carmine and the gold, everything is good, but leave the gray off. And I said, Father, why are you opposed to that Jesuit gray? So in other words, there was no Jesuit gray, but many times we give a salmon color, we give a name, but if that was a Jesuit gray, then leave it, you know, then it's all right. I'm sorry that...
Are there some commissions that you really wanted and didn't get? I can't think of anything that wouldn't go to Conrad Schmitt Studios, but I'm curious.
Thank you for saying that.
Yes.
But maybe there are some that we hesitate on, Jim, if we think that we would not do justice, if we're able to go in only as business representatives and give it a coat of paint job. I find many, many times the leaders, the committees, will have a tendency to state, you do exactly what we state. You do make our statements. I want that chair to be so-and-so. And if it will not create a full amalgamation of artwork, it disturbs me if there's an offset. So then it's up to us to show them the character of the work, what we could do. And we do our best at it.
Right, there are these projects, and the projects are some type of, in some cases, they're awarded by the bid process. Mm-hmm. In other words, the lowest bid gets the project. And if you handle a project as a piece of art, you can't really bid it because you can't write the specifications tight enough to have the bid process work. And the individual or individuals who suffer in the end would be the owner, because the lowest bidder either made a mistake or he's taking shortcuts. So we don't bid.
You've done some fabulous projects, and we've talked about St. Josaphat's, we talked about St. Ignatius, of course, the Church of the Annunciation here in town, magnificent building. You've done one of my all-time favorites, and that is, I don't know if it's called Union Station, but it's the train station in St. Louis that's just magnificent. What problems did that present you with, and what are you proudest of in it? Go ahead.
Go ahead, Bernie.
That was an interesting project. They assembled 22 companies from throughout the United States to go through the station with a woman representing the funding agency, Rouse Corporation, and her name was Donna Laidlaw, and she took us through, and as she was taking us through, she asked, well, now that you've seen Union Station, what do you think it's going to cost? And the other companies were coming up with $250,000, $350,000, $400,000, and I didn't answer. And she came up to me at the end when everyone else had answered, and she said, you didn't answer. And I said, no. And she said, why not? And I said, because they're not including the total restoration. I said, it's somewhere between $750,000, $1,250,000, depending upon the scheme, depending upon what we find in our investigative dig. And which she didn't call us for a month and a half, and I thought the project was gone. And all of a sudden she called us and she said, you were right. We did check the other people and they weren't including everything, so we were rewarded the project, and it was $1,148,000. And
absolutely magnificent. Every time I see that or see a picture of it, or I'm in St. Louis, I think, why didn't we do something like that with our train station?
Good for
what
you.
Would you have done with that? Let's talk about that for a minute.
It had a tremendous art spirit, architectural spirit, first of all, and it is something that should have been saved. I wish that it could have been saved, but I'm very proud that we did save, let's say, like the Pabst and many, many others, the City Hall and so
forth. What would that station have looked like when Conrad Schmitt Studios finished?
It would have been far more beautiful than Union Station, St. Louis.
Really?
Yes,
oh, yes. It had such fantastic lines.
You could have mixed some of the contemporary architectural form with the old tower, and I think it would have tied beautifully. I think many, many times I saw...
Do you have to, I'm sorry for interrupting, but do you have to think of, okay, I'm going to take this train station and do something with it, but it's going to have function afterward. And how do you merge those two?
Yeah, but it could have the function not alone as a train station,
right,
but it could be an auditorium or it could be a gallery. And I sometimes think churches could be doubled up. It pleases me when I see that children are coming into a structure, into a church, and using it for a choir practice and what have you, and give it a little bit more of the overall meaning. The word church means people. And a train station need not only be a train station, it could be an architectural form, a gallery.
Well, when you say gallery, that really excites me. I think that is, because I had never thought of that with that train station, and those of you who remember the station we're talking about, it was magnificent. And that would have made a fabulous gallery and restaurant, whatever.
What we have in Milwaukee, viewing that view of the lake, you know, it would have been terrific. And then, of course, showing not alone the traditional works of art, but very contemporary works of art. When I think what some of our students are doing today, the young students have a free mind and a free spirit, and I hate to place a cap on that.
Where do you find, other than your family, artisans to do this kind of work?
We don't. They find us.
They find, yes.
They really do.
Where do they come from?
We have from all over the world. They know of our studio, and we have literally a very thick file or files on different applicants. Right now we have two individuals that just have started from Russia, and neither of them speak English. Another one from Bulgaria. And they're very, very talented, and they have the old Milwaukee work ethics. They're very attuned to working hard, and they have the ability to work with their hands and their head. They're craftsmen and craftswomen, and it's fun working with them. And we all feel like we're a part of the team, and I think that's why it functions so well.
You said craftsmen and craftswomen. Have you ever had a problem with, for example, someone who said, I don't want a woman working on this?
Yes.
Really?
We have many, many times, Jim. The Orthodox were a little reluctant to accept a woman designer. And maybe that was part of their heritage. But after we presented our scheme on the Frank Lloyd Wright Church, and Frank Lloyd Wright originally had indicated only an abstract line in his sketch of the windows. And I felt that they needed that heritage of giving it, and that it would be an Orthodox structure.
This is the Church of the Annunciation.
The Annunciation. Yeah. And we prepared a design, and of course they were opposed to it, first of all, because one of our top designers was a woman designer. And it disturbed me, because I thought my mom deserved to have the best heritage too, so I fought for Helen, and we received the work, and it was very fine. They accepted that.
In about 30 seconds, working on the work of a master such as Frank Lloyd Wright must present you with enormous problems. 30 seconds, you want to bounce off some of them?
Oh, he was a tremendous great man, and I give credit that we boost for that man. However, there are times, Jim, not alone Frank Lloyd Wright. I think back of one time, a pastor called me and he said, "Bernie, will you please come to Madison and to Mount Horeb to see me?" He said, "I'm going to have Frank Lloyd Wright do our church, the first Roman church that he would do." Oh, I said. And
we will stop right there and pick it up the next time we do a show with Bernard Gruenke, because we are out of time. Thank you very much. This was a great pleasure.
Jim,
thank you for being with us. I hope we'll see you next time right here on I Remember Milwaukee.
Thank you very much, Jim.